This my timer. Okay, so we are here to talk about how to manage support clients with a project-based team. The subtitle of this presentation is a West Side Story. My presentation also has some musical themes interwoven within it. Nowhere near as awesome as what we just saw on the project management team, so ratchet your expectations down a little bit. That was amazing. But if you're familiar with West Side Story, you might find this presentation extra illuminating and interesting for that reason. A little bit quick discussion about who we are. So I work with Digital Bridge Solutions. We are a full lifecycle digital services agency founded in 2009. We work with mid-sized enterprises and help them build digital content and commerce experiences. We've been hosting and sponsoring the MidCamp conferences are now our second year. We primarily work in Drupal. We do a little bit of Magento work as well. Some of the clients that we worked with are you see at the bottom of the screen. So these are kind of mid-sized enterprises with recognizable brand names in the Midwest area, but not huge multinational organizations. So that's a little bit about the organization, a bit about me. So many ways to get in contact with me. So my email address is up here. You have my phone number. My Drupal.org ID is here as well. Or Twitter address is here. Also our link for giving feedback on this session. So if you hate the session already, you can start giving feedback on that already. If you love the session, you can start commenting already. And we are actively tweeting throughout this, throughout the whole conference as well. So be sure to hit us up on Twitter. So that's a bit about me. Why West Side Story? Well, one, for obvious reasons, this is an aerial picture of Chicago, and you can see kind of the loop area off to the right. And that little red dot over on the left, that's us. That's UIC Student Center West. That other little red dot, that's our offices, the Digital Bridge offices. So this whole thing, we are in the west side of Chicago. So that's one reason why this presentation is called the West Side Story. But there's also perhaps instructive lessons that we can learn from West Side Story, the famous musical and movie from the 60s that helps us understand relationships between project teams and support teams. Show of hands of who has actually remember or ever seen West Side Story. And this is where we're going to take a divergence probably from age perspective. So, all right, West Side Story people, hands up. Okay, all right. So when I start doing this, you guys are going to know what to, right? There we go. All right. Okay, because there's a musical number at the end and we're going to all get in formation. All right. Who, my younger folks are who have no idea what West Side Story is and wonder what these old heads are talking about. Okay. All right. So this is perhaps a movie you guys need to add into your Netflix queue. An interesting movie. It is on the list of top 100 movies of all time. If you want to get perhaps a little frustrated about how little progress we've made in the last 50 years about race relations, watch that movie. You do have to suspend disbelief a little bit, especially here in Chicago where we have lots of gang violence and our gangs do not randomly break out into dance and song. You got to get past that a little bit to watch this movie. But it is a good movie about race relations and about the power of love and compassion for other people and how that can overcome some of the difficulties we face as human beings. So, highly recommended, West Side Story. And we'll interweave some of those topics into our talk here. I'd like to cover 4 things with you guys today. I want to talk about just differences between project and support from our definition, from how we see things. I want to talk about some of the challenges we have with support clients when you're trying to organize those or support those clients with a project-based team. And I want to talk about some of the good things about it, so why you might want to continue to offer support to your clients after you've built your site for them. And they'll talk about us as Digital Bridge Solutions, how we manage these clients. Not holding us up as perfect, but necessarily there's a way that we do things and keep clients, for the most part, happy that we want to share with you guys. So, we'll start talking about project versus support. Definitions first. So for us, a project team is a group of people that have been assigned to a particular client to address a particular specified set of issues. That's your project scope. And they address that specified set of issues during an uninterrupted stream of work that has a start and an end date. That's your project timeline. Sounds pretty smart. Who said that? Me. All right, that's how we're going to define project team. All right. Support, on the other hand, is ongoing, ad hoc demand for enhancements, break fix, training, reporting on digital assets that you may or may not have created. Who came up with that definition? Me as well. All right, so difference between projects and project teams and support. First and foremost, from our perspective, it is better if you have separate project teams and support teams. So if you're in this room and you have one team dedicated to projects and one team dedicated to support, good on you. And that's awesome. And we would aspire to be that one day. That's just not the situation that we are in today. So we have a mixed group of people that handle both project and support, but I'm not here to try to convince you that it's better to do it that way. And I do think it actually is better to have some specialization between your team that works on projects and the team that works on support. Not to say that that's not without challenges. I've worked with larger organizations that do have that distinction between project teams and support. So this is where it might be interesting and instructive to bring in some of the concepts and characters from West Side Story. You guys might remember the Jets, right? The Jets was one of the street gangs in the West Side of New York, featured prominently in this musical. And the other gang we have in West Side Story is
Sharks.
The Sharks. All right. The Jets and the Sharks have very similar skill sets. They're both street gangs. They have very similar sizes and makeups, but they have friction, right? They have friction between each other. One thing we can see that's different between the Jets and the Sharks is racial makeup, right? The Jets are predominantly white. The Sharks are predominantly Puerto Rican, and there's frustration that ensues between that group. Similar to what can happen when you have separate project teams and support teams. There can be conflict between those two organizations because they feel differently. They may not actually have different makeup. They may actually be doing similar things, but the fact that they're kept separate can cause them to have some conflict, similar to what we saw with the Jets and the Sharks in West Side Story. So again, similar skill sets, similar things that they do, but there's inherent conflict because the groups are separate. Why is there conflict? Why is there frustration between the Jets and the Sharks, or between your project team and your support team? Well, one, the support team can also often feel like there's not equal status, right? They don't get the equal recognition for the work that they do. And that's because your Jets, your project team, they're out flying around doing the most complex projects, doing the most interesting things. And your Sharks, your support team, well, they can sometimes feel diminished. They can sometimes feel that their role is to kind of sit and play in a pile of garbage all day. And they may not be as excited about that and may want to, at some point, start throwing that garbage at the project team. So conflict between those two organizations because of the different assignments that they receive. So as I mentioned, our organization, we don't have that issue. We don't have two separate teams. We don't have two separate gangs. We have one gang. This is our gang here as of last year. And between that group of people, we split out our project and support work all within one team. So everyone has to do a little bit of everything. So we'll talk through some of the challenges that we find trying to manage our now portfolio of 30-something support clients when we're also doing ongoing active project work. So first challenge that it's instructed to talk about is just the developer mentality, right? So developers in this room, show of hands of developers here. So developers are typically in the business of making awesome, right? And so you are building, solving the most complex challenges and issues, and using your code and your brain to do something really great that probably couldn't have been done without you. And that is a markedly different mindset from what sometimes you need to take on a support client. So sometimes we find with our single team, we need to transition that mindset from I build awesome to a more service-oriented mindset of, boy, I'm sorry to hear that you're having that issue, Mr. Customer. Let me get on that right away. And to transition into that mindset, first of all, if you built the thing, there's some acknowledgement that needs to come up with that what you built perhaps isn't awesome, or not as awesome as it could be. And there needs to be kind of a mental obstacle to get over to say, well, maybe the client's not wrong for bringing this issue up. Maybe there's something about the thing that I built that doesn't work as well. Or if somebody else built that code, then and you're just supporting it, then that developer who is in the business of building awesome has to go dig into somebody else's code that is not awesome and try to make it better. And the developers that we have experience with would usually rather dig through a pile of human feces than to do that task, and probably correlate those two tasks on similar levels of attractiveness. So there's a developer mindset and mentality thing that needs to be overcome with your project team if you're going to try to get your developers to do support, and just ratcheting up a little bit of customer service orientation with your developers who may not have that in their typical work. Challenge number 2, unpredictability. So this is a chart of volume on the New York Stock Exchange over the last 10 years or so, this might as well be a chart of your average support intake on any given week. It's going to wildly go up and down, and you kind of know as you get more support developers that you're kind of going to get more support work, but on a given day or on a given week, it can go way up and way down. You just don't know. It's just unpredictable that way. What can make it a real challenge when you're trying to run your organization. And resource planning, right? So if you're like us, you're an agency or a freelancer or whatever you may be in the business doing client services, and part of your job is to take your team of people and match them up against a team of clients and say this person is going to work on this feature for this client, right? And so what we do every week is do some resource planning to figure out which of our people are going to work on which of our client projects. We've got a great plan in place at the beginning of every week or at the beginning of every project about how we're going to staff a given project. And then, due to that variability that sometimes comes up in the support network channel, this happens. Something happens, blows up your whole plan for the week, right? So how do you deal with that? Or why would you even want to deal with that with a support plan? So when you have a situation like that, when you have a plan in place, you've got your team, and some people are doing project work and some people are doing support work, and something happens, and now there's a code red, and you're pulling people off of project work, and you're putting more people on support, and your Jets and your Sharks who are on the same team are now fighting with each other, and it's a stressful situation, and deadlines are happening, and the client is upset. What can sometimes happen is somebody gets shanked. Which is awful, right? When your developers start fighting amongst one another and people get upset. So you're probably thinking to yourself now in your chair, man, why would I want support clients? I don't want to get shanked. It's not in my job description. I don't want to have that sort of conflict on my team. What possibly good reason would there be to take on support clients? Well, there's several. So let's talk through some of the benefits of support. One is the client wants it. It's good for the client. Now, if we're using West Side Story as our metaphor, who is the client in West Side Story? Maria. Okay. This is a young, nubile Natalie Wood doing her very best job to look Puerto Rican. Not quite getting there, but doing her best. It's in her best interest, it's in the client's best interest to have a project team and a support team that ideally work at the same company, minimally that work together. So Natalie and Maria, actually in her character's name, she really needs the Jets and the Sharks. She needs them both, she needs them to get along, and ideally she wants them to be in the same game, to work in the same company. Same thing with your clients. They really want to not just buy a website and have you go away, but they really want to buy a digital channel, right? They really want to buy a way to get new leads in their business, a way to increase their brand, a way to get more sales, and the website's one way to do that, but that website continues on in perpetuity, and so they really want you to be there to help continue to enhance and maintain that website on an ongoing basis. So thing number one is the client wants it. That's why it's a good reason to provide support. Thing number two, your business development function likes it. So let's meet Chris. He's a BD guy, and he's out there hustling, trying to find new clients. And whether you're a freelancer and you're just doing this for yourself, or you have a small agency like ours, your BD function is out there trying to hustle and find new business all the time. And so Chris is stressed out, especially because it's a smaller agency. He's got mouths to feed, so he's got to find other new business, new clients all the time. So if your BD function can then start to generate business off of your existing clients, right? Your existing clients you already have relationships with, who are going to come back and ask you to do more work for them, or be giving you work through the support channel, well, that's great. That means your BD function doesn't have to go out and find so many new brands and new clients. And so if you get more business from your existing clients, that makes your BD function smile. They like that, right? Other reason you might want to try and support is that it's a helpful environment to begin onboarding new team members, whether they be developers, whether they be project managers. If they're newer to your team and you're kind of trying to try them out and grow them through the organization, oftentimes a good way to do that is by putting them into the support channel. And again, not to diminish that work, but the work is usually just smaller, right? It's easier work, it's going to get done in a day or a couple days rather than a month, 6 months. So if you're trying to get someone in your team who's newer to your team exposed to your processes, support's often a good way to do that. And if you're trying to mature someone new in your organization, let's say they come in with more like a toddler level of experience, or maybe they're that kid, that funky teenager who's trying out his new dance stuff. Right? You may try them in the support organization first before they get to a little bit more mature level of experience in your organization. You start putting them on bigger projects. Also, as someone gets more mature in their career or needs a break from project work, and maybe they're ready to go out to pasture a little bit like the guy Jim on the far right, you might put that person on support for a little while as well, just to give them a break from the rigors of larger project work. So again, support work is a good way to start onboarding new members into your organization. So lots of good things about support as well. So some tips, thoughts, techniques on what we do as Digital Bridge on managing support clients. And again, we're not presenting ourselves as experts. We're not presenting ourselves as we're doing everything right. This is just the things that we've done to be successful in managing our growing queue of 30 or something support clients while we're continually taking on new project work. So rule number one that we found successful is single responsibility and collective accountability for the support inbox. So that means in our organization, one person mans the support inbox, but multiple people are copied on the support inbox. As a matter of fact, if I pull out my phone, I'm probably getting support emails right now. So I'm copied on all those, but we have one person actually manning all those. So let's meet Nicholas. Now, Nicholas is a bright young man. He's a well-looking, sharp fellow. He's a really talented business analyst. Also gets into a lot of the content creation work and content strategy work on our side, and he really likes Drupal. So this is probably a good picture of Nicholas after we gave him a 5,000 row content matrix. He loves that stuff, right? He's way into that stuff. So Nicholas is very good and has very good client-facing capabilities. And this is a picture of Nicholas after we told him he was going to manage our support inbox. Less enthusiastic, but still into it, still willing to give it a try. So in our organization, Nicholas is our entry point for our support inbox, even though we have multiple people copied on the support channel. So that ideally Nicholas should be making the first response to all those support inquiries, but if he's not, if he's busy, if he's tied up, if he's on vacation, then other people in the organization have access to that support inbox and are constantly being copied on those incoming requests, so that I can jump in to manage one of those or respond to one of those as well. So, singular responsibility and collective accountability for the support inbox. Job description and messaging, another tip we've seen for being successful in managing support clients. So, you may look at this and say, wow, that guy found a way to sneak in the fact that he's hiring and put his job description, job opening up on his presentation. And yes, you're right. So all of those things. But as you can see in this job description, it's a little bit hard to read, but for our role, our PHP developer role, we tell people right up front in the job description that in this role you will be working on new client work, but also be working to help manage and maintain our current portfolio of support clients. So we tell them that right up front, and we continue to message that during the recruiting process. So it's really important from just a clear expectation standpoint that people coming into your organization or people that you're partnering with know that they're going to be doing new builds, but also be doing a fair amount of support work as well. So we make sure we're really clear on our messaging around that. Resource allocation based on experience. So in our perception, in our kind of philosophy, it's always better for the person that worked on something, that built something, to actually be the one that fixes it or addresses any issues with it. So Colin Powell had a famous quote just as we were getting into the Iraq conflict of if you break it, you own it. So our view on that is, well, if you built it, you own it. And it's better for us, and really better for the client as well, for the person that built a particular application to at least be the first priority, the person who's going to go in and actually do the support work on it. Doesn't always happen that way. Just for resourcing, sometimes it's impossible to happen that way, but it should be our first priority because it makes the fixing process go faster. Some of that can be mitigated by just having better documentation of your client sites or better documentation of your code, but it's still never going to be fixed as fast as the person who built it. So we try to, in our support work, even if that means pulling somebody off of a new project that they're on for an hour or two a week to go and fix something from a previous client, we do that. We'd rather do that than pull another developer who is not familiar with that code base into that process. And our approach, or our belief as well, when we're trying to manage support clients and any project work, is that the whole consulting model, we need to start thinking about that differently. If you came from a larger consulting organization, you were probably brought up to believe that consultants or developers are sold in increments of 40 hours, right? And you cannot subdivide that increment of a person smaller than 40 hours. It is our belief that that model is eroding. I don't know how much longer that model is going to be around. And if you're a freelancer, you probably never had that model. You probably never sold your time in increments of 40 hours. You sold your time in increments of the time it took to get something done, right? So it's our belief that in our digital space, the web development space, there's going to be a lot more of that type of thing, of people selling work in the unit of time it takes to get something done rather than in increments of 40 hours. Now what that means, though, since your people are actually working typically 40, maybe a little bit 40 hours a week, that you essentially have a game of Tetris. And we had one of our resources actually during our resource meeting a couple weeks ago mention that, boy, our ongoing week-to-week process feels a little bit like Tetris. And I said, yes, that's right. Because we have an availability period of 40 or 45 hours or so, and you're stacking multiple projects, support work, maybe one or two projects into that developer's capacity to give them enough work to do for the entire week. Now, you're probably never going to get all the way up to 40, so there's going to be gaps, right? There's going to be gaps in that developer's work week that you're just not able to fill up with different blocks of tasks. But the goal is to get that, just like in Tetris, to get a full row all the way across with no gaps in it. And that means your developer, even though they may be working on 4 different things, is fully allocated for that week. And again, there's going to be gaps, but the first time you ever played Tetris, you probably didn't win, right? So it took more practice, and that's what we do as an organization to get better at this by providing more processes and practice at managing our developers' time and allocations. All right, any questions on that so far? Tools, so things that we use to manage this process. And these are tools that we use. You may use different tools, but regardless of the tools you use, there's probably like 5 basic things that you need to do when you're managing a support queue. One is have some way for issues or requests to come into the organization, right? The second is once you have an issue or an issue's been recognized, to assign that to someone in your resource pool and prioritize it, give it some level of priority. Third would be status tracking on that issue, so it goes from acknowledged to working on to ready for test to fixing after it failed a particular QA test to being ready for deployment. So those sorts of status trackings are very important as you're moving issues through your organization. And client communication, right? Letting the client know when the thing is going to be released, what status it is, when it's ready for them to test it. Important through that process as well. Time tracking, how long it took to do that thing, and then how much of that time you're going to bill back to the client. And in our experience, a lot of times in the support queue, you usually might bill back the time it took you to actually fix the thing, but you may not be able to bill that time it took you to diagnose or analyze the thing that was wrong, just because a client may not be willing to pay or have budget to pay for a 6-hour bill on something that took 2 hours to fix. So those are the 5 things that you need to do when you're bringing in support issues into your organization. The tools that we use are below. We just have a support inbox. We don't have any fancy customer portal. We just have support at dbridgesolutions.com. And if you emailed that right now and said you had a problem, chances are somebody in this room would answer back to you. And within 24 hours, you'd probably wonder why you're emailing us. But we just have an email inbox. Nothing more fancy than that. Once a support request comes in, we use a tool called Mantis. Again, not the flashiest or shiniest tool out there, but it is a functional tool for delegating incoming tickets or issues to people in your resource pool and assigning priority to them and tracking status. So we use Mantis primarily just for internal facing purposes. And again, people that are on an active development project for a new client may still be getting Mantis tickets. and still need to find a way within their work week to find time to work on manage tickets or support issues. And in our resource planning, we typically reserve about 20% of developers' time per week to just handle things that may come up in the support queue. So that's our goal, is that even if they're on a client site, they're never billing 100% on a project. They've got 8 hours a week or so to handle support issues. We use Google Docs a lot for client communication. So if a client wants to know what the status of something is, we'll have a Google Docs spreadsheet that they can use to see the status of that item, because we don't want to make Mantis exposed to them, because there's a lot of stuff in Mantis that's just going to confuse them or be over their head. So we use Google Docs for that. And then BigTime. BigTime is our time tracking tool that we use for tracking time against a particular client and against a particular support queue. So anyone out there using these tools or different, better tools that they'd like to suggest or bring up?
We recently moved to Kayako from a homegrown solution for the support ticket management.
Yeah.
We wanted a way that we could combine internal communication and separate that from client updates without having to email back and forth, which is what we're doing before.
Yeah, Kayako.
Yeah. We're about a month in, and so far we're really happy with that switch.
How was the transition?
It was pretty straightforward. We created a new email address for support.
Yeah.
And then basically, anytime we got an email to the previous email address, we would create a ticket for them and let them know about the new email address. And when we create the ticket, it emails them, here are your credentials. And then we didn't really get into any training beyond that, and so far so good.
And no pushback from clients on...
Nope. Before, they weren't getting any updates unless we were very proactive about it. Here, as we're working on it, we're able to provide them updates. Yeah.
That's cool. Other tools, what are other people using?
We like Harvest for time tracking.
Harvest.
Yeah, it's got some cool plugins. Trello has a plugin, so you start a Trello card and you hit the timer, and it goes right to Harvest. It's pretty cool.
And you can associate like tickets?
Yeah, so it's like a Chrome plugin.
Yeah.
And you don't touch anything in Harvest, but you open up the card, and it the Chrome plugin puts a track time thing on the card, and when you do that, that puts an association with the card in the time tracking system. So instead of having to do stupid things to try and figure out where all our time is going,
Yeah.
when I look at a card, I hit go, and every minute is tracked to every card. Actually, I'm a developer, and I'm willing to do that, which is a thing.
Right, it's a huge thing. That's for that reason alone worth looking into. Yeah, sir, you had something?
Didn't know if someone behind me was saying. We use Help Scout for a shared inbox, which works really well.
Help Scout.
The customer just sends emails, and it always just looks like a normal email to them, but on our end, there's a really lightweight ticket tracking thing, so we can assign it to people and do stuff there. But what I like about it versus other ticket systems that integrate with email is that it always looks like a pure email to the customer, as opposed to looking like an automated thing that throws status and due date and all this weird junk in there.
But then when it comes in, it kind of automatically turns it into a ticket on your end.
In the sort of Help Scout dashboard,
Yeah.
it's a ticket there, and we can assign it and do some lightweight tickety stuff with it, not like you would have with Jira or something like that. But really, the fact that it makes it always seem like a person-to-person email
Yes.
with the customer is something we like.
And then they don't have to go to this site and log in and remember another password in order to submit a ticket. Yeah, cool.
We use Jira, but we use automated service desk. That when the client emails a specified email, it turns it into a ticket, and then the person that's a point of contact looks at it and assigns it to whoever needs to get assigned to. So that's how we do it, and the client likes it way better than just keep sending emails back and forward to the point of contact, and then having the point of contact create a ticket. And it took too much time. So this one, automates it and then creates a ticket, gives it to us, we assign it, and when you have two buttons that share internally or comment to the customer, so if you comment internally, the customer can't see it, but if you comment to the customer, they can get their, say, oh yeah, this is done, or it's still in progress, or I can still see this issue.
Yeah, right, 'cause that's the challenge we sometimes have is you let the customer into your ticketing system, and all of a sudden they're seeing stuff you don't really want them to see.
Yeah, so you can comment internally, which is really helpful because it's like, oh, this is a major issue that, you know, somebody should have found previously.
Correct.
And you don't want them to know, like,
Correct.
it's a huge problem, so.
Right.
That helps out a lot, it doesn't concern the client.
Yeah, sir.
I've been using Teamwork and Teamwork Desk. Teamwork Desk, basically I have our support email set up so that whenever something comes in, it'll show up so that everyone can see it. But we have the ability with Teamwork, which is sort of our PM in the background, to be able to create a ticket for it to track against that, and they're tied together so you can see the status and update the client. But they don't have to see the full, you know, PM system. They only see the status of the ticket and what the rep has set up to that point.
What do we think it means that everybody in this room seems to be using different tools to kind of solve this problem?
We should build another tool.
Standard at this time.
Right, or that somehow these tools are kind of solving parts of the problem, the majority of the problem, but perhaps not every part of the problem. And so
Untitled will make it all better.
that's right.
One tool to rule them all.
One tool to rule them all. Show of hands, folks in the room who are also doing a new project and support with one team of people, one resource pool. Any other tips that you guys do differently than these for managing that unpredictable workflow?
But we have somewhat separated teams for that. Part of the issues that you mentioned up front were definitely things that we ran into where when you have the separated teams, you have the full lifecycle project developers, and then you get the support guys, and they really dislike it when they get a pile of crap that's delivered to their desk that they need to fix.
Yeah.
One of the ways that we tried to address that was to find some projects that are like middle ground and get them more involved, or try to get them on a full project, just so that they could at least better understand some of the shortcuts that may be taken in certain instances, so that they could just have a little bit better perspective. And then also vice versa, find gaps in between full projects to bring the full project developers into support, so that they could understand the impact of some of the decisions that they're making. It's helped a little bit, but it becomes more difficult to manage. So
Now you got a
have
resource
results.
challenge,
Yeah.
right? Resource gathering challenge. Yeah. Anyone else?
A way we helped out the resource planning issue was that we told the client there was like dedicated hours where we said on like Wednesdays and Fridays or Mondays and Tuesdays or whatever, that from 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. or 9 p.m. to 12 p.m., 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., this is where all the work is going to get done. So it helped us space out between working on actual projects and working on support. So it would be, okay, this ticket comes in and developer's done, we got a QA, and then we push it to production. And once we do that, it's all through these hours. Unless it's like a huge critical issue, then it's like, okay, we gotta work over it. But we told the client we have these hours, these support hours, and that's how we basically made the resource planning work. That we would get based like 4 hours a week, and that would all be to support. And sometimes you would use it because the developer didn't finish fixing the issue or whatever it was. So they would help out, say, okay, I used 2 hours this week, other 2 hours can roll over to next week in case we need it.
So like you block out like 10 to 2 on Wednesday, but then I'm a client and I've got a problem that comes in at 5 o'clock that day.
It really depends. The product owner looks at it and prioritizes and says, okay, this is a critical issue. Can somebody work on this right now? But if they say, oh, this is like low priority, it's not a huge deal, then they say, okay, we'll work on it this day and get it done.
Cool.
We do something pretty similar to that. It's actually usually Mondays for us, but we're not really too strict about that. But what we do is when we transition a client from a project to a support situation, we usually cap the hours on a monthly basis because that's our billing cycle with them at that point. And what that means is that when they have something that like blows up when we're in the middle of working on something, we basically say, okay, well, we're going to put our time to this instead, or like we give them the choice if it's something that's, you know, urgent. And then like we have I guess I would say like an emergency rate if it goes beyond that, because that involves like screwing around with other projects and of course there's political fallout. And most of the time the clients will be like, oh yeah, don't worry about that. Roll that into next month since this thing just came up. It's now the most important. So we just take the opportunity to like communicate with the client and let them make a decision about it. That way we can just say, okay, like we're all freelancers on my team, so we just like say, okay, who's available for this and can you make arrangements to make this happen? And so it's a bit ad hoc, but it seems to work pretty well.
And you're involving the client in the prioritization process as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
One other mitigation that we do when we're planning out our projects is we plan out 30-hour developer weeks,
Yeah.
knowing that those developers may have a tail on another project, or we may need to pull them into support.
Yeah.
It makes it less frequent that we run into a critical situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Similar to what we do, where we're basically doing like a 32-hour week, and then there's 8 hours of slush for something to come up. Now, if a 20-hour issue comes up, then we got a problem. But at least we're mitigating some of the seasonality a bit. Sir.
So we'll also do, if we know that we have a large project that's going to be transitioning from full-on development to support, so sometimes we will bring the support developer up ahead for the completion of that project so that you have some knowledge transfer. And then even with projects that we don't develop internally, support will have an evaluation when they come in so that the support team's kind of aware of that, and if there's code issues or something, we can raise those at a risk with the client and say, like, you have these issues and it could affect your site and this is how, and it kind of helps some of those conversations later when things come up.
Right, mitigating, like the gentleman was talking about, mitigating against the, I received a pile of crap and I don't have any voice in the process of issue. Absolutely. Cool. Well, with that, hopefully you've learned a little bit about how to make your street gang doing jazz hands at the same time and making your there you go your jets and your sharks getting along and managing projects and support clients as well. Again, my contact information, Twitter, Drupal org, email, phone number, feedback session right here, 17268. I think we're done plenty early. Any other questions folks had for us? Sir.
Anthony, how do you get to integrating Jira with your support emails and your
Yeah,
because we use Jira.
yeah, we created a service desk. So there's a tab on the job title, services. I don't know exactly how we did it because the technical we did it, but
That's possible.
There's a Jira plugin.
Yeah,
Okay,
Plugin for
Because
services.
we're using that right now, but we don't track support tickets in it, and I think that would be about a million times better. Because I just hate going through anyone's email to find anything. And I also think you forget about an email after like 2
yeah.
weeks.
After 3,000 emails, you get kind of confused on where.
Right.
You mentioned doing your comments, external comments. How did you implement that?
I think it's part of it. When I joined in, it says comment internally or share comment with customer.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. That's a Jira setting.
Yeah.
You want them to see stuff or not see it. I think that's just part of Jira.
It's
Yeah.
a project role. Yeah.
Yeah.
On a project, you can assign that.
So I was just wondering, our office is still trying to figure out how to charge for support things.
Yeah.
Do people and plan for it? After projects, do people generally kind of plan for like a percentage of the overall like project time for support, or is it just like we'll do whatever hours you want, charge you for them later? How do people manage that?
Yeah, I can take that, tell you how we do it, and see all the other folks in the room do it. So a lot of it, on our standpoint, has to relate with client maturity. And so some clients who have not done a web project before don't really have an understanding that the thing's not done, right? That there's ongoing work. And so when you start talking to them about, hey, here's how much you're going to be spending with us or another organization on an ongoing basis, or here's how much you might want to budget for like a maintenance maintenance retainer. Like they get weirded out by that, and so we just say, hey, we're here. Here's our phone number. If something breaks, you want an enhancement, call us. We'll just charge you at our hourly rate, right? And our off-the-shelf like hourly rate for that support work is $140 an hour. Which we say up front, call us, $140 an hour. Whatever your issue is, we'll look into it, and you go into our support queue. But more mature clients who are a little bit more savvy about the web space and know that this isn't a catalog that just sits on a shelf that needs some ongoing care and feeding, we're able to usually say, hey, if you're able to book with us, you know, a certain amount of hours up front, you're going to do 40 hours of work, enhancement work up front, we'll give you a discount on our rate, and that's going to help your site be healthier on an ongoing basis. But it's not, it really depends on like who we're talking to on the other end. Sure.
But I guess the one addition is maintenance the same as support?
Correct, no, right? So we have Drupal obviously takes maintenance, right? So you have to apply security updates, and so we usually do that at a fixed amount every month and say, this amount for just applying the security updates to your site and keeping it protected, and if something breaks, or you want to fix something, you want to enhance something, that's hourly on top of that.
I got a question. You said to put, sorry. You go ahead.
Yeah.
So my question was about the resource planning, your Tetris that you're
Yes.
Do you try and limit like the number of projects that you're assigned to any one individual per day, per week?
Yeah. So right there's realms of feasibility or barriers to feasibility of subdividing a person's time too much, right? And so our model, the way we work, is typically that each developer should plan on working on 2 projects a week and support work on top of that. We've certainly split people up further, sometimes 3, maybe even once or twice 4, but like any more than that, it just doesn't work. There's too much transit. There's too many switching costs to switch between products. So our typical model is that each developer is going to work on 2 different client sites a week.
Okay, so that I know you said like you should put like some of the newer people on support firsthand, and then like I guess get their feet wet, however. But for us, like before we did the service desk or anything, it was like conversations with the client, and we did the same thing where they would get emailed and a lot of people would get CC'd on it. But when it came to like huge things, we came to realize that we needed a more expertise person about the system that talks to the client, because a person that's new doesn't really know it much, and it took a lot more time to kind of reach out and grab information instead of that person just saying, them talking to someone with expertise. How would you go about that? Like,
For sure, yeah. That gets back to like in our standpoint, the you build it, you own it mentality. Where like if something that's busted on a site that's kind of specific, you need some specific knowledge to it, and we're going to pull in a developer who worked on that site and not somebody who's green to the organization. So when I say we would put somebody newer to the organization support, it's usually for things like maintenance, like installing software updates, or doing like HTML changes that aren't necessarily complex or require a lot of knowledge for how something was built.
Yeah, because the client before, like they had issues of asking me why something does something, and we had somebody that was new, that was basically new to the project, so they didn't know too much, and so they would always have to come to either me or one of the lead developers and say, so why are we doing this again? Like, because obviously, like if they're new to a project, they haven't been briefed on something that happened in sprint 5 and it's sprint 20 right now. So that was like a main issue of ours. That's when we had to realize that, okay, maybe we shouldn't have somebody new. Maybe we should have somebody that's been on the project for at least 5-6 months to talk to the client.
Yep, agreed. Yes.
So I have kind of a joint question about, so you said that there is a flat rate that you charge per hour for support requests.
Yeah.
Is that the same as the rate that you charge for like project work?
It's similar, but a little bit less, right? So, typically like our blended rate for project work is more like $150, but our support work, my assumption is that maybe not just, I'm wondering if you're gonna take a picture of that. You can look at what's that storage size in there. If we're doing support work, then my assumption is that I'm putting like more of a junior or mid-level developer on that project and not my most senior architect on that. So my blended rate's going to be a little bit lower on support.
Okay, so that one, sorry, that kind of leads to my other question, which was how you cover then for the fact that you're not necessarily billing for investigation time with bugs. Is your rate high enough that you're still able to make those hours profitable if it's like 6 hours in the investigation?
Yeah.
Because we're just pure time and materials. So
Yep.
if it takes somebody 10 hours to figure out what's wrong, they can charge 10 hours.
Yeah, yeah. And so from our standpoint, we view the support, it is a somewhat of a driver of revenues for us, but really, for us, we just view it as a reason to keep talking to the client and keep them satisfied. And so it's not, in terms of like the balance of revenue coming in our organization, we're still primarily project driven, and support just keep us talking to the client until they're ready to do another project. So I'd rather not, I'd rather err on the front of billing them less for support and keeping them really happy and satisfied, so that when they're ready to do another project, they're not shopping that work around, they're just going directly to us. But that's a total strategic choice that we probably should be continually reevaluating. Because yeah, there's certainly money being left on the table, probably. It's just a balancing that with client satisfaction. So, any other thoughts, things to share? There will be sprinting and maybe spontaneous dancing on Sunday. So be sure to check that out. That'll be right across the street. I think some of our guys will be sprinting with the Commerce guys on Commerce 2.0, which will be part of the upcoming, or the Commerce 2.0 release will hopefully be later on this year for Drupal 8 that's already out. So thank you guys, and be sure to just gave you 15 minutes of your life. So, yeah.